day today, I thought it was time to explore some lovely, simple cheese recipes for you with our lovely Scottish cheeses. So if you weren't aware that we have some terrific cheeses here in Scotland, then take a look at my Scottish cheese trail and you will see there's a wonderful range of cheeses right from the far north right down to Dumfries and Galloway. So take your pick, have a look, have a taste. They are super. And you can go on a real tour and visit many of them, or a virtual tour and get most of them online mail order. So we're going to look at 3 of the cheeses today because we don't have time to do all of them. If you're interested in learning more about them, we run cheese experiences here in Fife as well. So you can look on the website and check in and book into one of those for even more cheeses. So today I've got Jane's cheese from St Andrew's Farmhouse in Fife, near the back of Ainstrother. And this is a lovely farmhouse cheese. Now, I don't like using the word cheddar because that's that gorge down in England. I like to say farmhouse cheeses because that's what we have in Scotland. And this is a lovely one, made with their own Holstein Friesian milk. It's a raw milk cheese, so it's unpasteurised and it's matured and it's fantastic. We're also using the Westray Wife, which is a beautiful pasteurised cheese from their Ayrshire herd of cows up on the island of Westray in Orkney. A beautiful rind wash cheese. I've already opened this and I can smell the aroma, it's beautiful. And last but not least today, also Ayrshire cheese, this time Ayrshire cows in Ayrshire, and it's the Ayrshire Farmhouse Brie from Ballochmyle, which is a wonderful brie. So we're going to do a baked brie, some cheese straws and pinwheels, and a Westray soufflé. So that's on the menu today. And you can hear a sizzle in the background. I've got 50 grams of butter in the pan, and the recipes will all be up on the Scottish Food Guide website. And I'm going to add 50 grams of plain flour to make a roux. So we're just making sure that it's a nice paste, as you can see there. There we are. And we're going to give it a little bit of milk, whole milk, about 250 mils. And when you're doing a soufflé, you make a very, very thick white sauce. So you use about half the milk that you would normally use if you were making something like cauliflower cheese or macaroni cheese. So I'm going to put it back on the cooker soon, but to start with, you can just blend in some of the milk just here on the chopping board. So we've got the 50 grams of butter, the 50 grams of flour, and the milk's going in. So now I can put it back on the ring again. And I always use a balloon whisk rather than a wooden spoon because I think it gives me a smoother sauce. And you don't want lumps in it, definitely not. Now, you may think a soufflé isn't the simplest thing. You know, it rises, it falls, and everybody's got to be at the table at the right time. But actually, it's not as bad as it sounds. And I like doing a soufflé in a rather shallow dish rather than in a giant, big, tall soufflé dish like the chefs do. I can do that, and the same recipe works beautifully. But for this one, you can put it in for a shorter cooking time. And I'm all for shorter cooking time because then you can wait till everybody's sitting at the table and you know you've got them in the right place before you start doing the soufflé. So this is blending in very nicely. Now for this one, we're going to use the Westray Wife. Now, I wouldn't necessarily always put such a beautifully magnificent brown cheese in a soufflé, but this is my posh dish for the day, and with the Westray Wife it is gorgeous. And on the menu at the Linfield Hotel in Kirkwall, there is a Westray Wife soufflé, and it's so good. So this is my homage to the Linfield and their Westray Wife soufflé. So this is coming into a lovely thick sauce here. I'm going to add the rest of the milk because it's lovely and smooth now. And then I'm going to bring it to the boil to make sure that it's exactly the consistency I want. Meanwhile, I can put in a little bit of salt. Today we've got East Nook sea salt from St Monnans. There we are. And I'm going to put in a little bit of mustard because cheese and mustard go very well together. Not too much to overpower it, but just a little zing. And this is my favourite whole grain mustard from Galloway Lodge. And I'm just putting in about half a teaspoon into this quantity. It just gives you a little something. And a good twist of black pepper. So I'm keeping it simple because you don't want to spoil the lovely flavours of this cheese. It's so good. Now another thing I do with this soufflé is I quite often take, if I have it in season in the garden, some spinach leaves or chard leaves, and as long as they're washed and rinsed, you don't have to pre-cook them. You can literally add them to this, and then you've got a cheese and chard soufflé, which is delicious. Another thing I do is I sometimes make it a cheese and courgette soufflé, and for that I would saute the courgettes in a little bit of rapeseed oil and put them in the base. So you've got a lovely base of sauteed vegetables with the cheese soufflé on top. So that's another variation. So it's very easy to make it your own recipe. Now that is coming to the boil. It's nice and smooth, and we need that cheese ready. So I've got some of the Western Wife here. Rind washed, really beautiful, fantastic flavour. And you can eat the rind on this one, so don't cut it off and waste it. It's absolutely delicious. I can hear this simmering behind me, so I'll just keep an eye on it. I once went to a cheese tasting with a French chap who was in charge of the tasting, and we were going through different cheeses. And he said, "Is there any questions?" And I said, "When do you know when to eat the rind and when not to eat the rind?" And he gave me a classic French answer. He told me I was asking the wrong question. Ask not whether to eat the rind, ask where the cheese was stored. And if the cheese was stored on a shelf, eat the rind. And if the cheese was stored on the floor, don't. I wouldn't advocate that. That is not a good food hygiene message, but it's a good story and it's absolutely true. So certainly with these rind washed cheeses, I wouldn't hesitate to enjoy the rind. It's part of the flavour. And in fact, some people love the bit nearest the rind best. Now this is exactly as I wanted. You see, that is way too thick for a macaroni cheese or a cauliflower cheese. In my view, it's far too thick. But that's called a panade, and that's exactly what you want for making a soufflé. Nice and thick. So take it off the heat and get the other ingredients ready. So we have this beautiful Western Wife. I'm using 8 eggs for my soufflé, so it's a pretty generously sized soufflé. We will eat well tonight, so I'm being pretty generous with the cheese as well. But remember, if you use a cheaper cheese, you will need far more cheese because you get less flavour. So you get a wonderful, powerful flavour out of this, which is really delicious. And any bits that I missed will melt beautifully anyway. There we go. So that is going into my soufflé. Now, I need that again, so I'll keep that handy. And here is my, so you can see the little dots of the mustard grain. We've seasoned it. In goes the cheese, most of it. Keep a little bit for the top. There we are. And we can mix that in and it will melt instantly in the heat from the sauce. Now the other thing about putting the cheese in first is it takes some of the heat out of your sauce, because what you don't want to do is add your egg yolks to a very, very hot sauce. Otherwise you'll have a bit of kind of scrambled cheesy eggs. You don't want that. So just see, already it's melting beautifully, which is ideal. And meanwhile, behind me here, I have also got some egg whites that I'll just finish off whisking here. And there's our egg whites ready. And when your sauce has just come off that searing heat, it's quite safe to add in your egg yolks. So we'll pop it all in from the pan and fold them in. There we go. I transferred it because it's a slightly bigger bowl than the pan. It gives a bit more space. And just whisk it in. And as you can see, it starts to bind in there beautifully. Now, if you didn't want to use Westray, or you didn't manage to get it that day, one of the farmhouse cheeses would work beautifully, but don't use something like a brie or a cream cheese. Use something that's got a real depth of flavour that doesn't mind being melted. So it's about the consistency of the cheese as well. Connage do a good Gouda, that also works as a melter. So you have to think about that. There's a Toma that the Ethical Dairy do. So one that melts beautifully. And there we have that ready. Now, here we have our egg whites. In it goes. Now, what you should do, nearly forgot, is take a spoonful of your egg white first and blend it into your egg yolk, because it helps the rest of it fold in, because it just lightens it so it doesn't land like a boom. It just gives it a bit of lightness. Makes all the difference when you're blending it in. And then it goes into the bowl like so. You can see these lovely orange Fife eggs and that beautiful cheese. Fold it in either with a giant metal spoon or a spatula, and try not to knock out these lovely air bubbles that you've been so busy putting in. If you feel it's not enough for you, by all means serve it with a baked potato, but it's really remarkably filling and delicious, especially if you serve it with vegetables. And this will take about 25 minutes in the oven. A nice hot oven, about 190. Now, if you do it in a deeper bowl, it takes a bit longer. And if you do them in individual portions, it takes less. And that is ready to go. So we'll pop it here. And it does rise up and puff up, which is rather beautiful. There we are. And a little bit of cheese on the top that we kept. And into the oven, and we'll see it when it comes out. So the next cheese I want to introduce you to is Ballochmyle. It's a beautiful brie, and they make it in Mauchline, just outside Mauchline in Ayrshire. A lovely family business, and the Shaws make the most fantastic bries, large ones and little baby ones like this. And it is really delicious. And of course, it's delicious just like this. You don't have to cook it at all. And you can also make beautiful paninis. Brie and Bacon is a classic. And you know, you will get far, far, far better brie here in Scotland than you will buying a French one. Unless you know a Frenchman who knows a cheesemaker. There are so few real proper bries and camemberts left in France. You are far more likely to get a magnificent one right here in Scotland. And you're saving the air miles. So we've got a beautiful one here with this lovely white mould, which incidentally you can eat. And I'm going to pop it into a brie baker here that I got given as a present. Now, if you don't have that, you can kind of create a little cushion for it with foil and pop it in the oven. So it's not essential to have the brie baker, but it is a bit of fun. And then what you want to do is give it just a couple of crosses, just to let that flavour and oozing start, and to let the heat penetrate. So we're just going to do a couple of incisions there just to get it started. Now, if you've looked at recipes, there's a lot of different people that will spike it with rosemary and garlic and drizzle it with olive oil and do all sorts of other things, and that's the cuckoo. Do all sorts of other things to it. But you know something? This is so good. I think it's criminal to do anything to it. I'm leaving it as is. And I've got some lovely artisan bread here to dip it in. And I will never do one for friends coming for supper again, because by the time I sat down at the table, they had vanished it. So always have two. So it's going to go in the oven for about 20 minutes, and it'll just be melting and beautiful. So that's very, very, very easy. And if you want to adulterate it, that's up to you, but I'm not adulterating my one. In it goes. last but not least, another winner in our house is my cheese straws. Now, I'm not starting doing the pastry from scratch because it's very similar to the lovely pie crust on the steak pie that we did for the Hogmanay show. So do check it out, the previous programme, and you'll see the method for making your rough puff pastry with the rolling and folding and how you introduce the butter. And so I add my cheese at the same time as the butter, so that it's just part of integral into it. Now, having said that, if you have trimmings from a pie crust or some other plain pastry, you can still make cheese straws by cutting them up and then just scattering some cheese on the top. It's not as good because it's not right through it, but it still works, so nothing wasted at all. So this has had its roll and fold, and this time I've used almost as much, about almost a whole packet of Jane's lovely farmhouse, mature farmhouse. And here it is. It needs to be done a little bit earlier so that it chills again in the oven, which this has done. And I'm also going to just use half just now because my table here is not that big. But you will also see immediately all these lovely layers of pastry. So that's what we're going to use to make these beautiful cheese straws, and something else just to show you as well. So all the cheese is already grated and in here, and this should store it in a fridge when you're not using it. So I'll just pop it down here away from the heat of the cooker, and I'll just show you what you do. So it's been in the fridge, so it's nice and firm again. It keeps its layers. Never be tempted to scrunch up your trimmings when you do a rough puff pastry, because these layers are what make it as it is. A little bit of flour just to keep it moving. You don't need to do it on baking parchment, but I quite find when I'm making bread doughs and pastries, and then you get all the claggy bits on your counter and you're like this trying to get it off. So it's really just a convenience to save on the dishes a little bit. So it's easy just to give it a quick wipe, and you're not trying to get bits of dough off. So you don't want it to be too thin, because these are going to be lovely cheese straws. So I'll just give it a little roll and turn, like so. And what I'm going to do is show you a few and then show you something else as well. So I'll put that over there. And yes, that's about what I want for the cheese straws. And we'll put the board on it, see I'm cutting. That's another reason why paper is quite handy. So you've got some slightly funny shaped ones at the side, which are always good for the cook. And give them a little space round about, because they will spread a little bit. And it's up to you whether you want long straws or little straws. So I think I will do them a little bit. I'm going to cut that there because I don't want them half the size, but they're a little bit long, and cut them like so. Nice chubby finger size. And these will cook in a hot oven about 15 minutes. Keep an eye on them. You'll know they're ready when they're lovely roasted and you get little bits of cheese bubbling and they're a lovely golden colour. And these also freeze beautifully. And if you're making them up to 4 or 5 days in advance, you can put them in the fridge. And then when you want to have them, just pop them in the oven for 5 minutes, and then they come out as if you've only just baked them, which is rather delicious. So Jane's Farm has got a little cheese shop. You can pop in and buy cheese as well, and they are milking their cows every day and making beautiful Ainster as well as the farmhouse. Really lovely cheese. And I think she's been there about 11, 12 years now. And she's won so many awards. There we go. Now we'll just leave those there and we'll deal with that later. So these are going to go in the oven. And what I want to do is show you something else here with the pastry. So this is just another little idea with the pastry. This time you're going to roll it a bit thinner, like so. And I'm going to show you how to do pinwheels, which are just rather fun and rather delicious. So I've got here a little bit of pesto left over in the fridge, I was making a tomato sauce, and what I do is I make these when the ransoms are in season. So we're coming up to spring again soon, there'll be ransoms, and this actually has got Jane's farmhouse cheese in it as well, and some nuts, and this particular batch has got macadamia, but sometimes I use cashew or hazelnuts. Classically, a pesto would be parmesan and basil and pine nuts, but there's no rule book, so why not use a lovely mature cheese from Scotland and the wild garlic leaves. So what I'm going to do is take this and spread it over the pastry, and these will make beautiful pinwheels that are really delicious. Again, they keep for ages. You can throw them in the freezer, and then when you want to eat them, just pop them in the oven to warm them up, and it looks like you've just made them for that person that's walked in the door. And then what you do is you just roll them up like so. Very simple. And then cut them. That one will be for the cook. And these spread out, so they're lovely little bite size, but you have to space them out because they will puff out and spread out. And you can see you get the lovely green colour as well. This recipe is also on my website, scottishfoodguide.scot, so you'll be able to find that there too. And you can see how easily you've got these lovely little pinwheels that make a very pretty treat on the table. A nice little savoury with leftover pastry, leftover cheese. It works great. And our soufflé is ready. So you can see it's got a lovely crust on the top. Even before your eyes it starts to sink a little bit, but that lovely cheese and crusty topping is exactly what we're after. I buttered the dish so it's lovely and easy to come away, and you just cut into that and it's a lovely, slightly soft in the middle and really delicious. Look at that. Perfect. And now everything's out of the oven. So we have got these delicious cheese straws here and the little pinwheels. And you can see they really work very prettily and they're delicious. So you can serve them in a beaker, or you can do little railway tracks like I've done here and pop the pinwheels round about. Entirely up to you. You saw the soufflé before, and here we have got the Brie straight out of the oven. Very hot dish, very hot, but really delicious. I'll just tip it up a little bit so you can see. There you are. Really delicious. And I'm going to serve it with some lovely sourdough, and you can see you can use a knife, or you can just dive in and get a lovely melty bit of brie on the bread there. Really delicious. So I hope I've inspired you to try out some more Scottish cheeses. I hope you'll seek out these beautiful cheeses, try the recipes that are on the website, and do join us for a cheese experience. We have one running in March and one running in April. So you're very welcome. You'll find them on the website. Until then, happy eating.